In the United States Midwest, a harrowing search is underway to locate the graves of Native American children taken from their tribes and sent to boarding schools.
These were not schools. It was a prison camp.
From as far back as I can remember, I've heard this story. You know, my mom would say she's still lost somewhere.
The recent discovery in Canada of more than 1,000 graves at former boarding schools exposed the state-sanctioned abuse of Indigenous children. The blueprint for these schools came from across the border in the United States. Now Native American tribes in the US are demanding justice for the forced removal of their children, and a bigger, untold story is emerging. A landmark federal government report now estimates tens of thousands of Indigenous children could have died at US institutions.
I don't like calling these things grave sites or cemeteries. I don't call them that. I call them crime scenes. That's what I call them.
In this report, Foreign Correspondent gains exclusive access to one community as it begins a journey to uncover the truth. On a cold winter's morning, these Native American children are having a lesson in language.
Okay, that's your format. Are you ready? Here we go. Sapa black ARP.
Sapa black ARP.
Shah red ARP.
Shah red ARP.
The language is literally the heart and soul of our people. It holds our identity, and it holds our practices, our beliefs, our philosophies, our worldviews, all inside the language. So our existence is directly tied to it. There was the we.
Redwing Thomas is one of a few who can speak Dakota, his tribe's language.
Practice this word with me. Say, emakiapi. Try it again, emakiapi. Less than 5% of my people, we don't know our language. We are on the verge of reclaiming it, but it's an uphill walk, you know, and we have a long way to go. It took generations to wipe the language out. It's going to take generations to restore it. She ignored him.
He blames the US government's boarding school policy for destroying his people's culture.
As Native people, we've been severed from our language, from our culture, from our practices over a whole course of time. But the boarding school era, in the course of history, did a number on our people where we almost did not recuperate from it.
From 1819 to 1969, hundreds of thousands of Indigenous children were taken from their tribes and placed in state and church-run boarding schools across the US and its then territories. The schools, under the guise of education, were a dark experiment in assimilation. The model for the schools was devised by military officer Richard Henry Pratt, an Indian hunter. By stripping away culture, Pratt believed he could kill the Indian and save the man.
When you have a motto, kill the Indian, save the man, I mean, come on, that's as genocidal as it gets. The schools were created for one purpose only, and that was to destroy our belief system, to destroy our family system, and to change our identity.
By 1926, 83% of Native American children were enrolled in these institutions.
Everyone in this room literally descends from a boarding school survivor. I mean, that's just the truth.
Redwing's grandfather, Albert, was sent to boarding school at the age of 8. He attended one of the largest and longest-running institutions, the Genoa U.S. Indian Industrial School in Nebraska.
He never really talked about it, and it wouldn't be until later, later in his life, where stories would be shared. One experience shared that a soiled sheet would be used to be wiped in the mouths of the other children who spoke their language. And if they didn't want those dirty sheets and soiled sheets shoved into their mouth, well, then you stop speaking your language and start speaking English. That's pretty hateful. That's pretty evil.
This entrance and a few buildings and barns are all that remain of the Indian Industrial School in Genoa. Once a sprawling campus housing children from more than 40 tribes. Today, it's a place where people come to learn the history of what happened here. This building, once the school's workshop, is now a museum run by the Genoa Foundation, a group of local volunteers.
Hi, Nancy. It's so good to see you.
Judi Gaiashkibos' mother, Eleanor, went to school here.
I'll let you look at your mom's window that was donated in her honor.
Like many survivors, her mother didn't talk about her time at boarding school.
She would talk about it, and there was sort of a haunting look or a sadness to the tone of her voice. She tried to tell the good things.
It says my mother's name there, but I don't know.
I don't have a lot of pictures of my mother because, for one thing, they made them be photographed for everything, and my mother detested having her picture taken. So I look at that photo they have, and I say, one of those girls is my mother. My mother cooked and baked breads and rolls and food that the children ate. However, most of the time they went to bed hungry.
To try to learn more, Judi began attending the school's reunions.
I started going to the Genoa Indian School reunions after my mother died, so I got to learn about what it was like and meet people that could have been at school with my mother.
The Genoa Foundation's secretary, Nancy Carlson, started the annual gatherings more than 30 years ago.
Former students were coming back, asking information about the school and saying they wanted reunions and this sort of thing. And so we thought, you know what? These people have this real need. Let's try to help them and do that.
3, good, super, I got you.
This reunion was the first. Filmed in 1990, these pictures have never been broadcast.
The first year I came, I stayed 2 years.
As the school has no living survivors, they offer a rare glimpse into what life was like for some former students.
So what was your day like? What time do you have to get up and all?
I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You never got any other time off to make up for it.
What did you learn here?
Well, I guess I don't know. I learned to, I'm not really sure. I guess I learned how to get along, with other people, strangers, being around strangers. Here too, I know. This was just like a military school. We had to march everywhere we went. To dinner, we went to march. To church, we marched.
These were not schools. It was a prison camp, a work camp. It wasn't a lovely place to learn your education. They were little soldiers. Every morning, the whistles blew. You had to get out of bed. There was nothing of home. You were stripped of all your cultural belongings. Your hair, which is so sacred for the boys, was all cut off. It was a self-sufficient school, so the children were used as labor. You learned the 3 R's half the day, but it was a very watered down curriculum. It wasn't stimulating. It wasn't with the goal that you could be anything. Dreams could come true at the Genoa Indian School for these children. No, the dream was you will be a servant.
Many students left the school with their culture broken. Others didn't return home at all.
What is important about where we're standing now, as far as you know?
Only that it's where we think the cemetery is. The only reason.
Why would there be a cemetery with the school?
Well, kids started dying at an early age. I mean, at the early time they were at the school. They had to do something with them. I don't think it was possible those days to send them home, the bodies, I mean. So they buried them here.
James Nash attended the school in the late 1920s. At the reunion, he revealed 2 of his classmates died at the school. He believes their deaths were covered up.
I searched the archives in Washington, D.C. for a week, and I never found any record whatsoever of these 2 deaths that I personally knew about.
Why do you think that is?
I think probably whoever was operating the Genoa Indian School had those records destroyed because they were derogatory to their image.
He took some of the people from the foundation board, or some of the guys, and they went out and they looked where he thought it was, but they couldn't find any markers or anything there. The next day they had like a grader that came in and just removed the topsoil to see if they could find where their graves, and they did not find anything. And so it was because of that they didn't find anything that they decided we were going to do this, set up a marker that's just to the east of this building to honor those former students that died.
The remains of 215 children, some as young as 3, buried for decades on the ground.
More unmarked graves uncovered at another Catholic residential school.
Last year in Canada, the discovery of mass graves at the sites of former boarding schools shocked the world. But with more than double the number of schools in the US, the government says tens of thousands of Indigenous children could have suffered the same fate.
At no time in history have the records or documentation of this policy been compiled or analyzed to determine the full scope of its reaches and effects. We must uncover the truth about the loss of human life and the lasting consequences of these schools.
A historic federal investigation into America's own boarding school era is now underway. In Nebraska's capital, Lincoln, Judi heads up the state's Commission on Indian Affairs. She says it's time to tell the truth about what happened at her mother's school.
When we first heard about what was going on in Canada, I said, we've got to focus on the children that died here. A cemetery at a school is not the norm, that you could die at school and then you're going to be buried out the door.
This whole history is almost invisible. People aren't aware of the fact that we're going to find these kind of graves. We're going to find missing children here in the United States too.
Judi asked historian Dr. Margaret Jacobs to find out how many children died at Genoa.
When I started trying to find out what happened to the children who died, the first place I looked was the government records. Nothing. So that's when I started doing some newspaper searches.
She soon began uncovering reports of students' deaths.
Spinal paralysis, heart failure, There's a lot of accidental deaths. We've come across a drowning, a child who was hit by a train. Their diseases were sweeping through these schools, but in many cases they weren't returning the children to their homes when they died, and they were burying them on site. And it's just kind of chilling to me, you know, to think that for so many children, the schools were death traps.
Those who grew up in Genoa knew and understood what happened here. It was a point that we were taught in school about Native American boarding schools, assimilation, but we weren't aware of the cemetery. At least I know myself, I didn't stop to think about the students that died here, what happened to them.
Nikki Drews volunteers with the Genoa Foundation and is helping investigate student deaths. She recently discovered more children had died.
We have found 86 students that have died, but without having the actual government records, it's hard to say how many there really are. It's almost 100% that there are more students that have died.
One of the 86 children who died at Genoa was Carolyn Fiskus's aunt, Mildred Lowe.
I have an old picture of my grandmother and my Aunt Mildred, and Mildred looks like she's about 3 years. And they're wearing white people's clothes and shoes. My auntie must have moved, you know how little kids wiggle.
In 1927, Mildred Lowe was taken from the Winnebago tribe and sent across the plains of Nebraska to school in Genoa.
They put her on the train and it started moving, and that train whistle would blow, and then she got to Genoa and she got off, and that was how it was. It was horrible, lonely and scary.
Mildred died 3 years later. She was 12 years old.
To lose a child and then to lose them in that way, you don't know what happened to them. It's a very sad story for our family. This is my wall of fame of my family. This is my mom and dad. This is on their 50th wedding anniversary, I think. We had this taken. My dad's a little bald-headed white guy, and my mom is ho-chunk. And then this is my son and daughter, their graduation pictures. And these is my pride and joy, my grandchildren. Put my Aunt Mildred up there with my grandmother. There they are. For me, it's like this is missing, this piece.
Carolyn has spent the last decade trying to find out what happened to Mildred after she died.
She's probably at the spirit world, but she didn't get a send-off. But everybody's there. We believe our ancestors are there to greet her. But, you know, we want her spirit to know that we know that too.
Carolyn has recently received Mildred's death certificate. It reveals Mildred died from influenza and meningitis.
When I got it, I was like, oh, you know, just reading that is just kind of like you say, oh, now this is real. She really did die there, and here's the evidence. And it's hard, I think. It's hard for me. Pray for all the spirits who haven't come home yet. Pray for them to find their way on this smudge and on this smoke.
The document states Mildred's body was sent home to the Winnebago reservation, but Carolyn is skeptical.
They didn't have any record of her being buried in the Winnebago cemetery. And my grandmother's record was there, but we didn't have Mildred.
She believes Mildred was buried at Genoa, in the school's lost cemetery.
You want more than just to come here and see this, right?
That's right. I'd like them to definitely locate the cemetery, fence it, Probably a monument of some sort.
More than 30 years after James Nash first mentioned the cemetery, a new effort is underway to find the children's graves.
In this situation, with this story of Native American boarding schools, there's a certain, it feels like there's kind of a sense of urgency. It'd be nice to be involved in that first step of finding them.
State Archaeologist Rob Bozell is overseeing the fieldwork.
The only map that has been found that depicts a cemetery is this 1899 Nance County Atlas. And I don't know if you can see that, but right there, the word CEM for cemetery and a cross. That's a symbol that cartographers use for cemeteries. This is a very coarse scale. Again, they're depicting something south of the railroad tracks and east of this property line, but it doesn't give us enough detail to say exactly where it is. We've also got air photos. It shows that the cemetery is somewhere in this area. It's a big area, probably 200 acres.
Using ground-penetrating radar, Rob and his team are looking for disturbances in the soil which could indicate a grave shaft.
This pyramid-looking thing represents a difference in soil compaction. Could be a grave, could be a big animal hole that's different than the surrounding natural soil. We have another one here, same shape. And we also had two same shape going up a little farther here. So we have potentially three or four anomalies.
The discovery creates cautious optimism. It will take months to analyze the data.
It's more than we've seen on our other 2 or 3 trips out here. I don't think we saw any anomalies anyplace else, so we're at least seeing those. Whether they're signatures of graves or not, don't know yet.
My name is Philip Swantek, born and raised here in Genoa.
Phil Swantek owns the land where the search for the children is taking place. He believes the canal, which was constructed shortly after the school's closure in the 1930s, destroyed the cemetery.
And you have to realize when they dug that canal, they had a dredge or a drag line that you could fit a big truck into on the scoop. You know, and in the 1930s, I don't think anybody was too much concerned if they run across bones or anything.
But no records have been found that construction disrupted any graves. Phil says he has mixed feelings about what will happen if the cemetery is found.
I own the land, and my opinion is if they did find something there, I would probably want it memorialized some way, but not disturbed.
Eight of the children who lost their lives in Genoa belong to Nebraska's Omaha tribe.
You know, they're speaking from the grave. You know, that's just how we see it. We're here. Find us, bring us home.
Chairman Leander Merrick says if the cemetery is found, the Omaha tribe will repatriate their children and lay them to rest on their ancestral lands.
They have to come home. This is their home. To bring them back here is going to bring closure for them, their spirits, and their loved ones, and our community as a whole. This is shining a light on the United States. It's not a good light. They wanted to eradicate us. They didn't want us to be a threat to them because of what they were doing. You know, the bottom line is they wanted our land.
Across the country, Native American tribes are mobilizing as they begin searching for their lost children. There are calls for a reckoning for the trauma caused by boarding schools. Dr. Samuel Torres is from the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition, based in Minneapolis.
This moment, as hard as it has been an important moment to remind folks from every background that this is an important part of the story of the forming of the United States of America, that this land was once Indian land, and it still is, and it always will be.
He says there needs to be a commission of inquiry as the first step towards reconciliation.
Boarding school survivors are not getting any younger, and there's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information that needs to be shared. Truth cannot be done without a focus on accountability and justice, and only through that can substantive healing actually take place.
For Redwing, keeping the culture alive is key to healing from a painful past.
So in my classroom, we reverse it. For the ones who had to go through it. So we reverse it. Instead, it's a happy atmosphere. Instead, it's joyous, and it's exciting, and it's enthusiastic. And it's everything that our ancestors were forbidden to have. That's why there's so much energy in my room. It's for them.
This is real. They really were here. It was 20 years ago that I was last here, and we're still looking for those children that died.
In Genoa, the recent search failed to locate the cemetery.
They're there somewhere. We know they're under the ground somewhere, and they need to be honored.
Efforts to find the children who never came home continue.
I can't rest until I feel I've exhausted every possible avenue to find the children.
Zinkara makia piga isanti edwatiga hawang para hamatahaya owania tu ake shakoi
ha wagmaha wakami makia piga isanti edwatiga isanti hamatahaya wani tu ake ma shakadoka.